The sky above the colony of Terralis was burning. Enemy ships filled the upper atmosphere, like black clouds swallowing the sun. Commander Rowland stood on the command platform of the defense outpost, his uniform torn, his face covered in dust and smoke. Around him, screens flashed red warnings, each one showing another defense tower going dark. The Dravek Legion had come without warning, and they came for blood. The colony's power core was almost gone, and their shields were fading fast. Thousands of civilians were hiding underground, waiting for a miracle that would never come. Rowland stared at the long-range transmitter in front of him, the last working piece of technology they had. He knew sending a distress call was useless. No one had answered in years. But his duty was to try, even if no one listened. He pressed the transmit key, his voice shaking. "This is Commander Rowland of Terralis colony," he said slowly. "We are under heavy attack by the Dravek Legion. We request assistance from any friendly fleet. If anyone can hear this, please help us." His words vanished into static. Carried through endless space, he released the button and looked up at the burning sky, knowing it was likely his last act. Outside, enemy dropships landed near the eastern ridge. Explosions shaking the ground, smoke filled the air, and the colony's sirens screamed their final alarm. Rowland turned to his second officer, Mira, whose eyes were full of tears. "There's no one coming, is there?" she whispered. Rowland didn't answer. Because lies were pointless now, he walked out of the bunker, feeling the heat of the fires against his skin. The once green valley was now a wasteland of fire and ash. He thought of the people below, of the children hiding in dark tunnels. He thought of the promise he made to protect them. But now, even the strongest walls couldn't stop what was coming. Then something happened. A faint hum passed through the air. Like distant thunder from another world, the scanners flickered to life for the first time in hours. Showing an unknown reading, Mira looked at the screen, confused. "It's not Dravek," she said softly. "It's something else." The signal was massive, too large for any known ship in their sector. Rowland frowned, checking the coordinates. It was far beyond the Dravek fleet, deep in the black void. Whatever it was moving fast, faster than anything he had ever seen. And it was coming straight toward Terralis. The Dravek commander, orbiting above, also noticed it. Their communication lines filled with alarmed voices. "Unidentified energy surge approaching from outer system," one officer said. "Possibly a solar flare?" Another guessed. But the readings were too precise, too directed. The Dravek fleet started to reposition, unsure what to expect down below. Rowland watched as the sky began to change. The flames dimmed for a moment, replaced by a strange white light that spread across the horizon. Myra shielded her eyes. "What is that?" she asked. Rowland whispered, almost in disbelief. I don't know." And then, through the clouds of fire and smoke, something broke through. A sound like a thunderclap shook the planet, followed by a flash that split the heavens. The first ship emerged, enormous, armored, its hull shining with metallic silver. The Dravek opened fire immediately, but their plasma shots hit an invisible wall and vanished. Then more ships followed, 2, 5, 10, forming a wall of steel and light across the sky. Rowland's radio crackled, filled with strange, deep voices. For a moment, he thought it was interference. But then, through the static, a calm human voice spoke. "This is Admiral Elias Grant of Earth Command Fleet," the voice said. "Stand by, Commander Rowland. Help has arrived." Myra gasped, her eyes wide. "Earth?" She whispered, "That's impossible." Earth was gone. Rowland couldn't speak. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at the sky. The human fleet spread out in perfect formation, engines glowing blue. The lead ship, marked TNS Resolute, charged its main cannon. A beam of white energy shot forward. Cutting through 3 Dravak cruisers like paper, the battlefield erupted into chaos. Enemy ships broke formation, some trying to flee, others turning their guns in panic, but it was too late. The Terran dreadnoughts moved with surgical precision. Every shot they fired tore through enemy armor. It wasn't just a rescue, it was retribution. Rallan dropped to his knees. The weight of survival hitting him all at once. He looked up. The clouds now glowing with human firepower, Mira whispered beside him. They came. They really came. And above them, the symbol of Earth burned across the heavens, a promise that humanity had not forgotten the stars. Far away from the burning colony of Terralis, a blue planet turned slowly under the light of its star. It was Earth, the forgotten world, the birthplace of humanity, now silent for centuries. Once, its fleets had stretched across the stars. Its colonies had flourished in every sector. But after the Great Collapse, Earth withdrew, broken and weary, closing its gates to the galaxy. For generations, no one had heard from them, and most believed the humans were gone forever, inside the dark halls of Earth Command. Admiral Elias Grant stood before a giant screen. The distress signal from Terralis replayed again and again, the voice of Commander Rallan echoing through the chamber. Under heavy attack by the Dravak Legion. Please, help us, the message said. Fading into static, around him, officers exchanged uneasy looks, their uniforms marked with the symbol of the old Terran Union. It had been years since Earth responded to any call for help. Grant turned toward his second officer. Commander Hayes, where did this come from? He asked quietly. Hayes replied, Outer Rim Sector, sir. Over 400 light-years beyond our borders. Grant stared at the holographic map. The red mark blinking far across the void. That was deep in Dravak space, and no one had dared go there for decades. He leaned closer, his voice firm but heavy with thought. They're calling for help, Hayes, he said. And no one else will answer. Hayes hesitated. With respect, Admiral, we're not supposed to get involved. The Council forbids off-world intervention. Grant's jaw tightened. Then the Council can court-martial me later, he said coldly. I won't stand by while another world burns. Across the room, the operators turned toward him, waiting for his decision. The tension was heavy. But something inside every human officer stirred. The old pride, the old fire. Grant raised his hand. Activate the fleet. Recall the captains, he ordered. Prepare dreadnoughts Resolute, Chiton, and Vanguard. Ready for immediate departure. His voice carried through the command center, and for the first time in centuries, Earth's war machine awoke deep beneath the planet's crust. Massive hangar doors began to open. Dust and smoke fell from ancient steel as lights flickered to life. Rows of massive ships came online, their engines glowing blue after ages of silence. Robotic crews reactivated old systems, fueling reactors and charging cannons. It was as if the sleeping giant had finally stirred from its long rest in the orbital dock. Captain Mira Solis watched the massive dreadnought Resolute come alive. She had heard the rumors that Earth Command was going to war again. She stood at the viewport, whispering, After all these years, we're going back. Her crew hurried through corridors. Preparing for launch, no one knew exactly what waited out there. But everyone felt the same fire. Meanwhile, Grant walked alone to the memorial deck. A wall filled with names of ships lost during the collapse stood before him. He placed his hand on the cold surface, whispering a quiet promise. You built this world, and we will carry your strength beyond it. He turned toward the rising fleet. Engines burning against the night sky. Hours later, the command signal reached every ship in orbit. All vessels, this is Earth Command, came the broadcast. You are authorized to engage jump systems, one by one. The dreadnoughts aligned in perfect formation. The stars shimmered around them as hyperspace gates opened like blue fire. Admiral Grant's voice echoed one last time, calm and clear. Humanity does not forget its own, he said. Set course for Terrali's colony. With a thunderous pulse, the fleet vanished into the void, leaving only trails of light behind, and in that moment, the forgotten world remembered what it once was. A guardian, a warrior, a promise. The silence of centuries broke apart, replaced by the hum of engines older than memory. Earth had returned to the stars, and the galaxy would soon remember its name. The Dravak fleet surrounded Terralis like vultures circling dying prey. Their ships blotted out the stars, their plasma fire raining across the planet's surface. Every defense turret had gone silent, every fighter destroyed. Commander Rallen stood inside the underground command bunker, his hands trembling over the control panel. He knew they could not last another hour. Myra watched the scanner nervously, the unknown signal still flickering at the edge of the display. "It's closer now," she whispered, "but I still can't identify it." Rallen leaned forward, his voice rough. "Keep tracking it, whatever it is. It's moving too fast for a normal vessel." The ground shook again. Dust falling from the ceiling, the Dravak were tightening their grip, pushing for total annihilation above the planet. Admiral Kreth of the Dravak Legion watched the battle unfold from his flagship. He smiled cruelly as explosions painted the sky below. "Finish it," he ordered. "I want this world wiped from memory." But before his command could be carried out, an officer shouted from the sensor pit, "Admiral!" New readings detected at the edge of the system. Kreth turned sharply, his scaled eyes narrowing. "What kind of readings?" He hissed. The officer hesitated, his hands shaking. "Unknown, sir. But massive energy spikes. Multiple sources." The bridge lights dimmed as the scanners tried to process the incoming data. A wave of static filled the air, followed by a blinding flare on the main display. From deep space, the void itself seemed to split open. A ripple of blue light expanded like a wound in the universe. And then ships began to emerge. First one, then three. Then an entire formation of enormous metallic beasts, each one gleaming silver, their hulls marked with the ancient symbol of Earth. Down on the surface, the sky came alive. Civilians hiding underground felt the air vibrate as thunder rolled across the heavens. Rallen ran out from the bunker, staring upward in disbelief. He saw streaks of white light cutting through the clouds. Ships so large they looked like mountains drifting through the atmosphere. Myra followed him outside, her eyes wide with awe. "Commander," she whispered, "is that them?" Rallen could barely speak, his voice cracking. "It's the humans," he said slowly. "It's Earth." Moments later, the first barrage struck. Blue energy bolts tore across the sky, vaporizing 3 Dravak frigates instantly. The Dravak fleet reeled in confusion, their formation breaking. Admiral Kreth roared, "Return fire. Destroy them." But his commands were drowned out by the deafening roar of Terran cannons. From the dreadnought Resolute, Admiral Grant watched as his fleet engaged. "Fire at will," he said calmly. "Let the galaxy remember who we are." Earth's dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation, their hulls glowing under plasma reflections. Fighter wings deployed like a swarm of steel birds, each one piloted by calm, disciplined soldiers. Every strike was precise, every maneuver flawless. Humanity's fleet cut through the Dravak line like a blade through glass. The space above Terralis became a storm of light and fury. Down below, the colonists emerged from shelters. Watching in stunned silence, the ground rumbled with distant explosions as the sky burned bright blue. Children pointed upward, cheering, while others cried in disbelief after generations of silence. After centuries of exile, Earth had returned, and it came with vengeance. Rallen felt tears roll down his cheeks as the comms crackled again. "This is Admiral Elias Grant of Earth Command," came the steady voice. "To all surviving forces on Terralis, stand by for evacuation. We've got you." For the first time in his life, Rallen laughed through his tears. He looked at Myra and said, "Tell everyone. The humans are here." Above them, the dreadnought Resolute unleashed one last strike. A colossal beam of energy that split the enemy flagship in half. The explosion lit the night like a second sun. Dravak ships broke formation and fled into the dark. The storm of battle was ending, but the legend of humanity had just begun. The battle above Terralis turned into a storm of light and death. The human dreadnoughts moved like giant predators through space, silent and unstoppable. Every cannon shot from their ships carved through enemy lines with terrifying precision. Admiral Elias Grant stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his face calm but his eyes burning with focus. Around him, his officers called out targets, tracking enemy vessels as the Dravak fleet tried to flee. "Lock onto their flagship," Grant ordered, his voice firm. "Ready all batteries." "Give them a message they'll never forget." The gunners nodded. Fingers tightening over the controls, the Resolute's main cannon glowed bright white, energy building until the air itself trembled. Then, with one flash, the beam erupted outward, a pillar of destruction slicing through space. The Dravak flagship shattered under the impact, its hull breaking into molten fragments. Shockwaves rippled through nearby ships, tearing them apart like paper across the enemy network. Confusion and panic spread. "Retreat! Retreat!" screamed their commanders, but it was already too late. The humans had come prepared for war. Fighter wings from the Terran fleet descended into the atmosphere. Their engines roared as they cut through enemy bombers and interceptors. Blue contrails streaked across the clouds while explosions lit the horizon. On the ground, Commander Rallen and his soldiers watched in awe. Every blast from above painted the sky with the color of salvation. Mira turned to Rallen, tears in her eyes. "They're winning," she whispered. "The humans are winning," Rallen nodded slowly, his voice soft. "No, Mira, they're not just winning. They're teaching the Dravak fear." Above them, the largest of Earth's dreadnoughts, Titan, entered the upper atmosphere. Its shadow covered the burning fields like a mountain of steel. Inside the Dravak ranks, chaos turned to terror. Their ships collided as they tried to escape, engines overloading from desperation. Admiral Kreth, wounded but alive, watched his fleet crumble. He shouted into the comms, "Who are they? What kind of monsters are these?" But no answer came, only static and screams. Admiral Grant watched the Dravak fleet collapse. His jaw tightening, he knew victory was close. But his tone stayed cold and steady. "Finish it," he said quietly. "Leave nothing that can return." Missiles launched in synchronized arcs, slamming into the last of the enemy cruisers. Each explosion echoed across the void like a drumbeat of justice. The planet's surface glowed with the reflection of fire from above. Civilians crawled out of shelters, staring upward at the sky that was no longer filled with death. Children pointed at the streaks of light as the human fleet shifted into formation. One little girl whispered, "They came from the stars." Her mother smiled weakly and said, "No, child, they came from Earth." Grant stood silently, watching as enemy life signs disappeared from the tactical map. For a moment, the bridge was quiet. No shouting, no alarms, only the steady hum of the ship. Then his first officer said softly, "Enemy forces eliminated, sir." "Terralis is secure," Grant exhaled slowly. "Send aid shuttles, medical teams, and supplies to the surface. Let them know they're not alone anymore." The massive hangar doors opened, and smaller vessels descended toward the battered world. From orbit, Earth's flag shimmered against the backdrop of stars, a symbol unseen for generations, now blazing proudly once more. Below, survivors cheered, crying out as the Terran insignia appeared in the clouds. Hope, once lost, had returned to the galaxy, carried by the wrath of Earth. The fires on Terralis had finally begun to die. Smoke drifted slowly into the pale sky, replaced by the silver silhouettes of Terran ships floating above. For the first time in days, the sound of explosions faded, replaced by the hum of engines and rescue shuttles. The survivors of the colony stepped out of hiding, their eyes wide as they stared at the human fleet that had come to save them. Commander Rowland stood at the center of the ruined square, his uniform torn and his hands shaking. He watched as one of the large Terran transports descended through the clouds. Its landing thrusters scattered dust and ash across the broken ground. When the hatch opened, soldiers in silver armor stepped out, carrying supplies and medkits, and behind them walked a tall man in a dark admiral's coat. His presence calm but commanding. It was Admiral Elias Grant, leader of Earth's mightiest armada. Rowland couldn't speak, his voice caught in his throat. He walked forward slowly until he stood face to face with the Admiral. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, two worlds meeting after centuries apart. Grant extended his gloved hand, his eyes steady and filled with quiet strength. "You called," he said softly. "And we answered." Rowland took his hand, his voice trembling. "We thought no one would come." Grant nodded once, looking over the shattered colony. "Earth remembers its own," he said, behind him. Human medics moved through the ruins, helping wounded aliens and children. They shared food, water, and comfort without hesitation. It wasn't just a rescue, it was a promise reborn. From orbit, the Terran dreadnoughts began transmitting a signal across every known channel. It was simple, a single message carried on a beam of light. "This is Earth Command," the message said, "to all civilizations. Humanity has returned." The word spread across space, reaching outposts, stations, and forgotten colonies. Every world that once doubted humanity now trembled with awe and curiosity. On distant planets, leaders and generals paused their wars, some in fear, some in hope, all remembering the legends of the old Terran Union. Stories of humans who fought until the last breath, who never surrendered. Now those stories were no longer myths. They were reality again. The galaxy had awakened to the sound of Earth's engines. Back on Terralis, children followed the human soldiers through the rubble. One little boy held a Terran patch in his hands and asked, "Will you stay?" Grant smiled gently, kneeling beside him. "We'll stay as long as you need us, kid," the boy grinned, holding the patch close to his chest. And in that moment, hope took root where despair once lived. As the sun set behind the burning horizon, Rowland stood beside Mira on the ridge. They watched the massive dreadnoughts preparing to leave orbit, their engines glowing like new stars. Myra whispered, "Do you think they'll come back again?" Rowland smiled faintly. "They never really left, Mira. They were just waiting for the right moment." Above them, the Terran fleet rose higher, their lights fading into the night sky. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of the Resolute, staring into the endless stars ahead. He knew this was only the beginning, a new chapter for both humanity and the galaxy. "Set course for home," he said quietly. "There's much to rebuild, and much to remind them of." The ship's engines roared, shaking the void with power. And as the fleet disappeared into hyperspace, one message echoed through the stars once more. "Humanity is back," the signal said, "and the stars will never forget our name."